Legal's mate. One of the most satisfying checkmates, and it starts with e4. Your opponent mirrors you with e5. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, d6, knight c3. 7 completely normal moves. Nothing suspicious so far. Your opponent plays bishop g4, pinning your knight to your queen. Annoying, but fine. You nudge it away with h3. They don't budge. Bishop h5, keeping the pin alive. And here's where everything changes. You play an unexpected move. Knight takes e5. Your knight is sitting in the middle of the board completely undefended, and your queen is still pinned. They look at the board, see your queen just sitting there for the taking, and they grab it. Obviously, who wouldn't? But then you play bishop f7. Check. The king has nowhere to go except e7. And then you play knight d5, another check. The king looks around for an escape square. There isn't one. 2 knights and a bishop have just delivered checkmate. That's Legal's mate, ICBM. The name stands for Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly why. You open with knight f3. Your opponent plays d5. You push e4, challenging the center. They take the pawn and your knight is under attack. Instead of retreating, you push it all the way to g5, now eyeing their pawn on e4. They defend with knight f6. You press again with d3. They figure the pawn isn't worth defending and just trade it off. You recapture with your bishop, and now something subtle has happened. 2 very active pieces are pointed at their king side, and there's an open d-file sitting right in the middle of the board just waiting to be used. Your opponent gets a little nervous and plays h6, trying to kick your knight off g5 and relieve some pressure. Reasonable move. Except they just walk straight into the trap. You play knight takes f7. You're sacrificing your knight, just throwing it into their position and offering it up. They take it without hesitating. It's a free piece. But then you play bishop g6. Check. The king has to take it. And now your queen has a completely open diagonal running from one side of the board to the other, pointed directly at their queen with nothing in the way. You slide your queen across the entire board in one move and pick up their queen like it was always yours to take. Fried liver attack. This one starts as the Italian game. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. Most players at this point will develop their bishop to c5 and the game continues normally. But some players, especially at lower ratings, will play knight f6 instead. The problem is, if you don't know what you're doing as black, this move can get you into serious trouble. You play knight g5. Now you have 2 pieces pointing directly at the f7 pawn, and black has a big decision to make. Their only real option is d5, blocking your bishop. You take the pawn. An experienced player here would play knight a5, stepping out of the mess and entering a well-known theoretical line. But a lot of players will naturally recapture with their knight, assuming you're just making a trade. And that's where things get interesting. You play knight takes f7, forking the queen and the rook. Black has to take it. And now you play queen f3, check, forking the king and the knight at the same time. If they try to hold on to the knight with king e6, their king is now fully exposed in the center of the board, and you spend the next several moves building up a suffocating attack that black has to play nearly perfectly to survive. But the worst move, and plenty of people play it, is king g8, trying to tuck the king into the corner thinking it's safe. Queen takes d5, queen takes d5, bishop takes d5. A rare solo bishop checkmate. The king thought it found safety and ran straight into a wall. Englund Gambit. Your opponent opens with d4. You respond with e5, the Englund Gambit. An aggressive, unorthodox response that white will almost certainly not be prepared for. White captures your pawn. You play knight c6, immediately attacking it. White defends with knight f3. You play queen e7, piling even more pressure on the pawn. White defends again with bishop f4, and now you play queen b4, an unusual looking move, but it's forking the king, the bishop, and the b2 pawn all at once. White scrambles with bishop d2, trying to block the check and save the bishop. You take the b2 pawn, attacking the rook. White plays the very logical bishop c3, attacking your queen and protecting the rook. Everything looks reasonable, but white has no idea the game is already over. You play bishop b4, their bishop is pinned to the king. White plays queen d2, defending the bishop and clearing the pin. They recapture with the queen. Rook is protected, knight is defending the queen, everything seems fine. But guess what? Queen c8 is mate in 1. Danish Gambit. You open with e4, your opponent plays e5 and you push d4, the Danish Gambit. They take the pawn. You play c3, they take again. You still don't recapture. Instead, you play bishop c4, offering up yet another pawn. They take on b2. You recapture with your dark squared bishop. You've given up 2 pawns, but look at the position. A powerful bishop pair aimed at the center, active pieces everywhere, and black has done almost nothing with their development. At lower levels, this position is incredibly dangerous, and there are countless ways for black to go wrong. But probably the most elegant one goes like this. Black plays d6. You develop your knight to f3. They play knight f6. You castle. Black plays bishop g4, pinning your knight to your queen. They're up 2 pawns, catching up on development and feeling pretty good about themselves. You play e5. Black doesn't want to retreat the knight, so they grab the pawn. And now comes an idea that should feel familiar by now. Bishop takes f7, deflecting the king away from defending the queen. But black is smart. They play king e7, not taking the bait. They're still up material and think they've just dodged the trap. However, that bishop on b2 that you developed earlier swings all the way over to a3, and just like that, black's king has nowhere to go. 2 bishops have her completely surrounded with no escape. Black has to give up the queen, and the game is over before it ever really got started. Fishing pole. This one comes out of the Ruy Lopez. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, knight f6, castle. Black plays knight g4, an ambiguous move that doesn't obviously threaten anything but suddenly makes white feel uncomfortable. White plays h3, trying to kick the knight away. And here's where black does something that looks completely crazy. They play h5, just offering up the knight for free. White takes it. Black takes back with the pawn. White is up a piece and figures the worst is over. White's knight on f3 is now under pressure, so it has to move. There are really only 2 squares, e1 or h2. Both lose. You play queen h4, and now there's a devastating mating threat white has almost no answer to. They can try pushing the f-pawn to open an escape square, but that runs straight into g3. They can sacrifice a full rook with rook f2 after g3, but the position is completely gone either way. White took what looked like a free knight and walked into a losing position in just a handful of moves. Budapest Gambit. The Budapest Gambit is one of those openings with traps hiding around almost every corner. What you're about to see is just one example, but if you enjoy this one, it's worth exploring further because there's a lot more where this came from. d4, knight f6, c4, e5. That's the Budapest. White grabs the pawn, you play knight g4 attacking it. White defends with knight f3, you play d6. Pieces get traded in the center. White plays knight c3, you develop with knight c6. They play bishop g5 attacking your queen, you push f6 to deflect it, the bishop retreats to d2. Everything looks completely normal. Both sides have developed, the position is balanced, nothing suspicious happening at all. You play knight e5, getting a bit more aggressive. White feels pressured. Trading in the center doesn't seem appealing since you just recapture with the g4 knight and stay active. So white plays h3 trying to kick that knight away. You play queen e7. Quiet move. White looks at the board and sees the knight on g4 just hanging there, completely free. They take it. But that's exactly what you were hoping for. You play knight d3 and that is checkmate. The whole point of queen e7 was to pin the e2 pawn to the king. So when the knight lands on d3, the pawn that would normally capture it is completely frozen. The g4 knight was never the real threat. It was just bait the entire time. Alien Gambit. The Alien Gambit was created and popularized by witty Alien himself. And unless you've been living under a rock, you've almost certainly seen it before. The whole opening is built around chaos. There are traps everywhere, and today is just one example of how a game can end. But it's a good one. The Alien Gambit starts as a caro-can. e4, c6, d4, d5. Knight c3 takes on e4, takes back. Knight f6, knight g5, h6, knight takes f7, king takes f7. White has just sacrificed a knight to drag the black king out into the open. You play knight f3. Now if black tries to pin the knight with bishop g4, that actually just loses the bishop immediately. Knight e5 checkforks the king and wins it back. So instead, black plays bishop f5. You play knight e5 check, the king retreats to g8, and you deliver another check with bishop c4. Black blocks with e6 and takes a breath. They're still up a piece and think the worst is behind them. You play g4, attacking the bishop. Black responds with bishop e4, hitting your rook. But that bishop just stepped off its duty of protecting the pawn on e6, so you play bishop takes e6 check. The king runs to h7, and now comes the move that ties everything together, g5. It looks quiet, but it creates an enormous amount of pressure all at once. If black takes the pawn, Knight f7 forks the queen, the rook, and the pawn simultaneously, and black gets completely overwhelmed. So instead, black goes for what looks like the smarter option, taking the rook on h1. They're up even more material now and figure you'll just recapture the knight on f6 and the position will settle down. But actually there's a mate in one here. See if you can spot it before I reveal it. The move is g6. A pawn delivers checkmate. The king on h7 has nowhere left to go. The pawn on g6 covers the only escape, and every other square is locked down. Black won a rook and got mated by a pawn.